What your wife is going through, she's been kept mainly in solitary. She's been effectively treated horrendously already in prison, is now facing, as a direct result, Tulip, of what Boris Johnson has said, potentially years more in this prison.
Well, it's devastating because this isn't a Boris gaffe, a blunder, something that can be dismissed as a joke. This is a very serious mistake with very damaging consequences. My constituent has been in prison for 19 months already. She's been denied access to medical treatment, separated from her daughter, placed in solitary confinement. And Boris Johnson doesn't know the basic details of a case that I've continuously raised in the Commons. I raised it with him, the Prime Minister, his ministers. I would have expected him to know the details and not repeat the lies that have been peddled by the Iranian Revolutionary Guards.
Richard, what is the issue here if Iran believed or had been told, in this case by the Foreign Secretary, that she had been training journalists?
Well, so there's an attempt with this sudden new trial to try and frame her for something else. As a reason.
Is it a crime? I mean, that's the point, in Iran.
I mean, it's very hard to know what... The crime she's being accused of is spreading propaganda against the regime. So connecting journalism training, and of course, being a journalist is fine, training journalists is perfectly fine, but it can be used and spun in ways that, you know, this is why we've got her, there's more, you know, her family just say she's on holiday, but she wasn't really.
Right, it basically, it looks like there's an official exposure by the British Foreign Secretary and the British government of your alibi for her of being on holiday, which is the correct one, as a complete lie. Tom Newton-Dunn, what struck me as extraordinary was Boris, having made this terrible mistake, yesterday goes back into the House of Commons, has a chance to absolutely correct it and apologise unreservedly. Instead of doing that, he basically says, let me clarify, you know, if anybody mistook my words or the terrible way they were misconstrued, they weren't misconstrued. He couldn't have been clearer. He said that she was there to train journalists. If you're the Iranian authorities, are like, this is fantastic. This has confirmed what we've been saying all along. She wasn't there on holiday. Why couldn't Boris just swallow his mistake and apologise unreservedly?
Well, the simple answer is because he's a politician, Piers. And what he didn't want, which is quite frankly what he's got already anyway, is the headlines across all our newspapers this morning saying Boris forced to apologise for terrible gaffe, etc. Now, I think he managed to muddy the waters enough yesterday by saying, well, it's OK because the Iranian foreign minister has told me it's got nothing to do with me, and, you know, the charges that Richard's wife is now facing has got nothing to do with what I said. So I think he's out of the woods politically, certainly, in terms of the trouble for now.
Is he?
Well,
is he?
For now.
Well, what happens if this poor woman now goes to prison for years longer, and they say it's as a direct result of what Boris Johnson said? I don't see how that's not a sackable offence.
So that's why it's for now. So if we can't free Richard's wife anytime soon, and Boris is held directly culpable, because, and just learning outside, actually, what's fascinating is the Iranian politics and all this. It's OK for Boris to talk to the foreign minister, who has no control whatsoever over the judiciary, who are run by the hardliners, and the Foreign Office is run by, you know, the softliners. So Boris is far from out the woods. He won't be sacked today, though.
Well, Richard, what was your wife's response when she heard Boris Johnson's gaffe?
Well, first she heard being taken into court and meeting Judge Salavati. So her instant response was sort of bewilderment and just crying down the phone as to...
So she was in tears as a result of what the Foreign Secretary
She was in tears as a result of being taken to court, and then was sort of, you know, why and what's happened, and so I said, well, maybe it was because of the Foreign Secretary. In fairness, it was clearer once the article came out.
Have you heard a word from Boris Johnson?
I've not spoken.
Not a word.
I've asked for 18 months now whether he would meet my constituent, Richard Ratcliffe, who lives in West Hampstead, not very far away from Parliament, and Boris Johnson has not granted him a meeting even now. He doesn't want to meet him face to face.
Why?
And well, you'll have to ask him that.
Well,
I don't know why. Well, I guess he doesn't want to answer any questions that Richard may have for him.
Do you want Boris Johnson to go out to Tehran and get your wife out of prison? So do you think he's got the power to do that?
I think it would be really helpful for him to go to Iran and try to meet her.
Richard, is there a possibility that out of this horrendous mess that's sparked up this week, in a way it's put a lot of attention globally on what has happened to your wife when perhaps it had gone a bit quiet, and that actually it might possibly, God willing, lead to a situation where it may get her out sooner rather than it would have been?
That's the hope. The hope is that sort of more people looking and seeing that this is just outrageous can only, you know, the truth will come out.
How are you coping?
I mean, yeah, so obviously it was a really tough week. It was a tough week that she was brought into court. Actually, the sort of going around the media attention, the care that people give, the care that your viewers have given, and all the comments we get on our petition, that helps keep me going.
But on a human level, you know, you're a husband and a dad. You've got this little girl who, I mean, it's horrendous, isn't it?
And, you know, and a wife at the end of the phone every so often just asking me, you know, will I be home for Christmas? And you know, and looking for that reassurance. It's not...
How is your daughter coping with this?
She's OK. She obviously is still too little to really understand. She picked up on Sunday how upset her mummy was and how upset her granny was. And they were quiet and you know, was getting them a big cuddle to try and cheer her up.
She's being looked after by
her grandmother.
Grandparents in Iran?
Yeah, so she... I mean, she's actually got her passport back now, but I can't get to Iran to go and visit them.
Because...
They won't give me a visa.
Would you go if you could?
For sure. I mean, you know, it would be great to go with the Foreign Secretary when he goes.